Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Healing Outside the Box. This is episode 258, and it is part 2 of my 2-part series, Is Cross-Addiction with Food Possible? Now, in last week's episode, I mentioned that not only is it possible, but it goes both ways. If you suffer from an addiction to food, and you, say, have a gastric bypass operation, where you literally cannot eat because your stomach is a little bigger than the size of 4 grapes, you can become addicted to something else. And really anything else. Gambling, shopping, sex, alcohol, or drugs. If you suffer from one of the addictions I just mentioned, and get that addiction under control, even with the help of AA, NA, Gamblers Anonymous, etc., you can adopt an addiction to food. It all comes down to that rush of dopamine, or how you respond to it. Which is why I think an addiction to gambling usually doesn't happen unless that person wins big, followed, of course, by a rush of dopamine. So at the end of the episode I aired last week, I said, the trick is not to avoid stress, as that's pretty hard to do. The trick, maybe, is to try to exchange something else that is positive in order to avoid the self-destructive patterns of behavior. And as I said last week, it may help to include both healthy eating and meditation, hopefully both at the same time. And also cognitively or intentionally changing what we view as a reward to something positive, like, say, exercise, or goals for learning something new, or a cool hobby, or a trip you've always wanted to take. You get the picture. In addition, there's also something called epigenetics, which is an important factor. Now let's start at the beginning. Again, it all comes down to a substance called dopamine, which we like. Dopamine makes us feel great. Just like Tony the Tiger, except that we are trying to get away from the sugared frosted flakes and onto those healthy habits. Athletic people describe the sensation of a dopamine rush as the runner's high. We have all heard that. But dopamine gets released for all kinds of reasons. And we all get why people would want to go chasing after that feeling. After all, it feels great. Now, there's another substance that we are familiar with, and it's called serotonin. Serotonin makes us feel calm and relaxed. Serotonin is produced from an amino acid, tryptophan, found in foods like milk and turkey. It helps us relax and sleep. I imagine it comes as no surprise that people desire this feeling, triggered by serotonin, if they are anxious or restless. Understanding why cross-addiction occurs and how it could possibly lead to self-destructive behavior may come down to the control or management of these two brain chemicals. But how? Let's say we eat a chocolate chip cookie or a juicy cheeseburger and we feel that rush. Well, that's all quite normal. But craving more and more and getting that rush every day or several times a day is another story. If you constantly eat chocolate chip cookies or whatever food makes you get that rush, your body responds by dampening down the stimulation. In brain chemistry terms, you will begin to have fewer receptors for the dopamine to bind to. Then it takes more cookies and ice cream and cheeseburgers to get that same high. Now, does that sound familiar? Well, it should, because it's true about alcohol, opiates, gambling, and even shopping. This inability to get the same high you get with the first cookie is true with obese individuals as well as opiate addicts. However, as we know, unlike drugs or alcohol, food is necessary for survival. Food and sex are two primary drives that are not going away anytime soon. So I guess if I were to define food addiction, it would go like this. Food addiction is the craving for certain foods without the ability to control how much is taken in. And that leads to self-destructive eating. And this, as we know, can lead to suffering and premature death. When food becomes an addiction, it means that the prefrontal cortex in the front of our brain is impaired. And even my cat Betty, with a smaller prefrontal cortex, seems to be addicted to those fatty cat treats. But with people, it can be more complicated because we're more emotional. If we suffer stress or trauma in our childhood, as I mentioned before, it's easier to grab on to anything that can soothe us. So when we're stressed, we need something to soothe ourselves. That's not weakness. It's simply our brain's response to trauma. 100 years ago, I don't think people would have guessed that we would need coffins the size of a full-size bed, but we do. I know I say this a lot, but when someone asks me, why do we have such a problem with obesity now? The first word that came out of my mouth was refrigerators. Before I had time to think and tried to come up with some complicated or insightful response. So we have an abundance of food, combined with less physical work, combined with more disposable income, combined with maybe different kinds of stress, combined with food scientists who developed a way to put refined sugar in everything. And of course, scientists knew we craved it. We would buy more, and maybe we would become addicted. After all, food scientists are not stupid. Naive, maybe, but stupid, no. The human brain is naturally susceptible to addiction because dopamine is necessary for our survival. And dopamine triggers a desire for more dopamine. There is a biochemical survival mechanism going on. After all, the cavemen and women had to have a good reason for getting out of their nice warm beds, maybe not with 300 count sheets, but still had to get up in the winter and chase after some food. When we are born and get our first taste of milk, some circuitry in our brain gets triggered. Dopamine gets released and sets off a pleasure response. So milk sugar triggers dopamine. And cow's milk, that we have all gotten a taste for, also contains a small amount of casomorphins. Now, these casomorphins are found in slightly higher concentrations in cheese and ice cream. Add table sugar with cocoa butter, i.e. brownies, or maybe add cream with chocolate, as in chocolate ice cream, and that sets off more dopamine. So there you have it. It's dopamine and serotonin. Just control these two chemicals and we are all set. Oh, that's right. We don't know how to control these two substances. Or do we? Or maybe the question is, can we in the future? Right now we don't. But there's a lot of exciting research going on right now with these two chemicals and something called epigenetics. So let's get into epigenetics. Epigenetics is basically the study of chemical reactions related to how your genes get expressed and the factors that influence the expression of your genes. Okay, so you inherited your DNA from a male and a female. In this case, not important who the baby daddy is. You may, for example, have inherited a susceptibility to diabetes or breast cancer, but there is not a 100% certainty that you will get either of these diseases because other factors will come into play to determine whether or not you get those diseases. Some experts now think that the same conditions apply to brain diseases such as schizophrenia. Maybe the same conditions may also apply to addictions. It seems to make sense. So the experts are now saying that your genes may make you prone to addictions. But other factors, like childhood trauma, may come into play to trigger the full-blown addiction. Experts also believe that the foods you eat can alter your gene expression. Not only is it the case, as Dr. Peake said, that you are what you eat, but you are what your parents and grandparents ate. So the experts are now suggesting that you can change your epigenetics with diet, either for the better or worse. If you are born with a tendency for addiction, whether it be food, cigarettes, or opiates, you may be able to dampen that addictive tendency by altering those epigenetics. Studies have shown, I know, another sentence starting with studies have shown, but studies have shown that leafy green vegetables, or if you've been listening to my previous episodes, also broccoli sprouts, may be able to change our gene expression biochemically. So maybe we can do that by eating lots of organic vegetables and fruits, and you can bump up your chances of success with meditation of some kind, or maybe laughing, or nature walks, or all of the above. So perhaps the way to treat a food addiction is to start with something similar to a substance addiction program, with the exception that portion control is the front and center goal instead of abstinence. So the goal is not to eliminate our desire for food, but to control it. So where do we begin? Well, I'm so glad you asked. First, number 1, let's start by taking an inventory of where we are right now. You may want to jot things down so you can look at it later, or start a journal on your phone or laptop. Think about how you would describe yourself. What are your goals? What is your current stress level? Where would you like to see yourself a year from now in terms of wellness or well-being? What might be getting in your way? And in the future, what tools can you use to help conquer those obstacles? There's lots of health and wellness coaches that can help you through that process. Number 2, we may want to pick up some meditation or relaxation technique. 2 popular ones are TM, or Transcendental Meditation, and Mindfulness Meditation. They did studies following TM meditators who were meditating for the first time, so you'll see the most dramatic difference in, say, the first 2 to 4 weeks. They said when they started after a few weeks that they began to see everything differently. It was like they felt this overwhelming sensation of calm. So you know something's happening up there in that frontal cortex. And it can be any type of meditation or stress management. You don't have to pay someone a lot of money to get your own mantra. Just steal your friend's mantra. No one's going to come and arrest you. People also like guided imagery or mindfulness. There's plenty of techniques in videos on YouTube that can run you through that. Whatever you feel will work for you. But I do suggest setting up a time every day and putting it into your schedule. Okay, number 2, eating whole foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and fish. Now, fruits are good for their antioxidants, but they have lots of other nutrients as well. Green vegetables, sprouts, my fave thing lately. Red vegetables. Remember, we have to heal those epigenetic molecules. Lots of fish with those omega-3 fatty acids. And of course, nuts and seeds provide essential fatty acids, and beans are good for fiber. Number 4, daily exercise. Now that the weather is nice, we can walk every day, or bicycle or jog. I also suggest finding an indoor activity to do in the bad weather, and maybe put that into your schedule at the same time you did the outside stuff. Number 5, setting positive goals, like, say, getting a degree, maybe trying to get off the meds you're on, living to see your children's children, becoming a glass half full person, whatever you see as the goals you'd like to set for yourself. And then number 6, maybe make a list of habits that get in the way, and you can fill in your own blanks there. For example, say you're thinking, my family likes junk foods. They're always in the house. Think about ways you can talk to your family or educate them on the importance of avoiding dependence on those junk foods. And make healthy snacks, or buy healthy snacks, or buy the foods that your kids like but you're not crazy about. Whatever works for you. And last but not least, get plenty of sleep. Okay, now if you need support or assistance, I just happen to be a certified wellness coach, and I can assist you on your journey. You can contact me on my website contact page, which is Healing Outside the Box. And we can set up long-term goals, 3-month goals, and break it down to weekly goals. Whatever works for you and you think you can make into a habit, that's the way to go. And as Diane Keaton said in Annie Hall, la-di-da. There you have it. So that's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.